to infinity and beyond.
This is me. This is how I win.
Were you rushing or were you dragging? Answer!
You're a wizard, Harry.
Say what again? Say what again? I dare you.
No, I am your father.
Hasta la vista, baby.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
And here we go.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back inside the film room. Zach Goins here with Johnny Sobchak for a jam-packed episode. We are talking Beau Is Afraid. That's the big screen feature, and then a whole lot of television. Ted Lasso, the latest episode there. We're halfway through the final season. Succession, also halfway through the final season. Things just keep popping off over there. Meanwhile, Barry just kicked off its final season. A whole lot of endings here, Johnny. It's making me emotional. And we are talking the first 3 episodes of that show and then the season finale of Mandalorian season 3. So a ton of stuff to talk about. Johnny, this is an intimidating episode to cover that much. How are you feeling?
Boy, yeah, it's a lot to take in. I feel like we're getting hit from all sides. The good news is we're getting hit with mostly good and great television. So
absolutely. Beau Is Afraid, and I'm afraid to cover all of this stuff in one episode, but we're gonna make it work. I feel like that movie in and of itself could be 2 episodes worth of content, but we're gonna jam it all in here together and see what happens. Because if we don't talk about it now, we're gonna fall behind, and then it's just going to keep on coming. But that's what we've got on the schedule today. And before we dive into any of that, we've got to plug all of the stuff. You know, the social media pages at Inside Film Room. Follow us on all those. The website, the newsletter, the Rewind. Make sure you're subscribed to that. That's on our social pages. That's on our website. So you can be the first to hear about all of our new interviews we have. June is going to be crazy, you guys. We've got Shrinking interviews with the full cast there, minus Harrison Ford. You know, we're still working on him. He doesn't do these things. He's Harrison Ford. Then we've got Schmigadoon coming up, the musical theater comedy from Apple, full cast. Everybody's great. It's a blast. And then, of course, Ted Lasso. The week of Lasso, we'll be back for a 3rd and final installment. So all of those will be coming to you in June. Make sure you're signed up for the newsletter so you can be the first to hear about all of that, because it's going to be a blast. But Johnny, I know we usually start with what's going on, but because we're talking about 4 different television shows, I feel like that's a lot of what's going on. Correct me if I'm wrong. If there's anything that I'm missing that you feel the need to talk about before we dive in, be my guest. Otherwise, we can talk Barry and Mando.
Hey, let's get into it. No games.
All right. I'll kick us off because Johnny, you've yet to catch up with Mandalorian. Like, we've got all of these shows to talk about. I can't blame you for falling behind. It's okay. We finished season 3. I'm going to try and, not go too in depth with, well, just kidding. Johnny, you said you're okay. You've seen it online, but we've kind of gone back and forth on this season. We got our finale. It was only an 8 episode season. Maybe because of those Boba Fett episodes, who knows? But anyway, I was very high on this season all the way through, even going into the finale. I know people had been complaining about it not being Mandalorian enough, not focusing on Din Djarin enough. I loved it. I still stand by this statement that I said a couple weeks ago. I think this was my favorite season because while some people favored the serial Western, different adventure every week, I liked the connectivity. It was like a good level of not like MCU level. You have to know 800 different things to keep up with it, but like an overarching story that we can kind of follow along throughout the season and the past season. So I was a big fan of it. I thought the finale did a really good job of kind of wrapping up the story, setting the stage, providing a clean slate. There was a lot of action in it that was fun. I know I've talked about being a big fan of seeing this large party of Mandalorians working together. We had Mando, then we threw Bo-Katan in the mix, then we have like, I don't know, 50 different Mandalorians that are rolling deep with them. And when was the last episode that you have seen? How familiar are you, I guess?
Oh man. The last one I saw, I think, was it was something about Bo-Katan. Like, I think they went back and they saved.
Did you watch the Lizzo episode or no?
No, that was the one after when I stopped.
Okay, I want to say that was 6, maybe. So you probably made it to
5. I think we got 5. Yeah.
Okay. Well, since then, it's just been this group. They continued to expand their numbers, recruited like the Mandalorian mercenaries that Bo-Katan had previously worked with, and it kind of all just like culminated with a standoff with Moff Gideon. And I thought that was handled really well. I liked there was a ton of action. It really popped off. I feel like some sentiment online has said that they felt it was rushed, which obviously if you're going from 10 episodes to 8 episodes, like that's fair. But I was not turned off by that by any means. I thought it worked really well still. And I'm excited for what's next, because this kind of, like I said earlier, it kind of cleaned the slate for moving forward. I don't think they have made any sort of announcements. I know obviously we've got Ahsoka coming soon, which might have some crossover with this, but in general, like, we know there's going to be that Mandalorian, the Dave Filoni movie, which is probably years away. So I don't know if they're going to squeeze in a Mando season 4 before then, if there's going to be Ahsoka season 1, Ahsoka season. I don't know what's going to happen between now and then, but I'm excited for whatever's to come, because I thought that this was a very fun season of Mandalorian, and I'll leave it at that since I'm the only one who has seen it, unless you have anything you'd like to add, my friend.
I would say, I think to why I'm so far behind is that the season just hasn't gripped me in a way that I don't know. I guess the first 2 seasons I didn't watch live, like I watched them after the fact, so that played a little bit differently. And it's been so long since those first couple seasons came out, but I really did enjoy watching those, and I thought that the first season, the second season were very complementary to one another, without being too similar. I think that there was just a right balance between the two. And I thought, I just still can't get over. I think they left it at such an interesting, intriguing stopping point at the end of season 2. I just still can't get over how they just completely like washed over that and like got back to like just Grogu and Din, and like, I don't know, Pedro Pascal's presence on the show just feels like non-existent to me. Like it just seems like he's one of the biggest stars in the world right now, and he's just kind of like an afterthought, it seems like. Like there's other things going on. Bo-Katan is kind of like taken over as like a quasi protagonist, which is fine. But even then, it just feels like, there's all this talk about, well, Pedro Pascal isn't really on set, and he's just comes in, does the lines and whatnot, and then they throw it in there, and it's like, I feel like you could kind of tell that in the first couple seasons, but here it just feels so much more like apparent. And just knowing how busy he's been with like other projects and whatnot. There's just been a little bit of like the charm and like kind of like the fun of it has been lost, I think, to me to some extent. And just, I think you can enjoy the season maybe more so like in a vacuum, like on its own. Maybe it's maybe more enjoyable, which again, still have a few episodes to see, or 3 or so. So I can't speak to the whole thing, but I don't know. I just think that something has been lost as far as like the story and like what it's been trying to explore, like what they were telling with the cult. I'm just going to call it the cult. Like, I don't know what else you want to call it at this point, but like how he started out as like a loner, and he was basically broken away from that cult, like kind of mentality and what he was doing on his own. And then he came into being with Grogu, and they went on these adventures together. And then you come into season 2 where he is starting to try and kind of reintegrate with that part of himself. And like, there is something there that maybe he can like come to terms with, and like how that's going to factor in with Grogu and like all these other things. And then it seemed like it was kind of just a message about, well, he has to turn away from this like cult, because it's not really about like the relationships with that. It's just about, being stuck in this certain kind of like mindset and like the certain culture. And then he's like able to free himself from that because he gets to be with Grogu, and like he learns like what an actual family looks like, and like what having a son is like. And then he makes that sacrifice at the end in some way to like let Grogu go, and he's going to go kind of do his own thing. And then it just ended up being, oh wait, no, you're not going to like sacrifice that and like do your own thing. You're going to get Grogu back, and then also you and Grogu are not only going to like be friendly with this entire like group, but you're just going to go back and actually like live and like work with them, and nothing like all of the intrigue and like the political stuff going on there, I think was just like completely thrown out the door. I feel like there was like anything surrounding like the intricacies of and like the morality of being part of that group. I just like, I don't know. I know that they're kind of moving to like, oh, well, it's all good. Like Bo-Katan's just going to like be the leader and we're all going to follow her. But I feel like there was so much more like nuance and like intrigue with that previously, like with the armor and kind of all these different like aspects of it. And I just feel like it's been missing. And again, I feel like on its own, maybe it's not noticeable or like it's more enjoyable, but I think in sequence with the first two seasons, it just feels like a complete like left turn, like departure and 180. And I don't know. I've just lost like my, I guess, passion for it. Like, I don't know if I'll finish the season. I mean, I imagine I probably will, and then just wait to see what happens with season 4. I'm sure will come down the pipeline and they're doing some sort of movie at some point, but God damn, I don't know. Star Wars just always like Andor is like such a wild card, like outlier for me as far as like enjoying and admiring like what they're doing in Star Wars. I just feel like The Mandalorian has just kind of fallen victim to everything that's going on over there. I still like the first two seasons. I really love, the characters like Grogu and Din and whatnot. But yeah, unfortunately,
I'm curious for me if I haven't watched the first two seasons since they aired. I never rewatched them at any point. But I'm curious for me if, because this is like following on the heels of Andor and it feels maybe a little bit more like that than it does the first two seasons of Mando, with those having been like the serialized adventures versus Andor being an overarching narrative. And like we've talked about previously, like some of the political intrigue and storytelling from Andor like seeping into, especially in episode 3 of this season. I wonder if I'm like comparing it to that more. Obviously it's not like on the same overall level as Andor, but if I'm like conflating those two, and that's why I'm more okay with this than
that's
like
a good point.
Comparing this directly to season 1 and season 2 of Mandalorian.
That's true. And that's kind of interesting, like from another point of view for me, because I just watched Andor so recently, so it's still pretty fresh in my mind. I'm wondering if almost like if I go back and watch the first two seasons of Mandalorian, because I haven't seen them in a while, like would they hold up? Like would I enjoy them as well and like as much, or would I be like, wow, I don't know how I feel about this? And like because I loved Andor, like I thought it was really so good. And yeah, I'm wondering if like through that, like the relative time that's passed and just the comparisons there, I'm wondering if that's playing a factor. I'm sure it is to some extent, but yeah, it's weird. I don't know. Star Wars is just in such a weird place. I mean, it's been like that for years at this point, like literally since Last Jedi, Rise of Skywalker type thing. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah,
I know.
I'm glad you liked it.
Thank you. I know you're getting ready to embark on your great Hollywood adventure, heading out to Los Angeles. But with Return of the Jedi coming back into theaters this week, to celebrate the 40th anniversary, I believe. Can I challenge you? It's going to be in theaters for a week. I know you have like 800 movies you're seeing in Los Angeles. Johnny, is there room for you to watch the original trilogy finally and see this movie in theaters?
Oof, that's a tall order. I'm not sure. I can't make any promises, but I respect you throwing down the gauntlet.
I'm throwing it out there. I don't expect you to commit to it because you're seeing what? How many movies are on the itinerary for your trip?
On the itinerary, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 movies, right? Like 6 movies right now that I should be seeing.
Respect. It's a lot. Well, moving right along with our television recap from a season finale to a season premiere. Season 4 of Barry on HBO 2 episodes last week to kick things off, then a third this week. And man, first of all, let me just say I needed that recap on season 3 big time. I had forgotten a lot of the stuff that had happened, and we just it hopped right back in, and this thing is firing on all cylinders. The 1-2 punch of Succession into Barry on a Sunday night is like,
dude.
I don't think there could be a better, like, I'm throwing it back to like my childhood. That's like going from Ned's Declassified School Survival Guide straight into Drake and Josh with Sweet Life of Zach and Cody following it up. Like that's just like a prime combo of television.
Yeah, I mean, it's unlike anything else that's going on right now, of course. And hard to compare. I think at one point or another, HBO had like something similar where they were having something like back to back. I can't remember off the top of my head, but might have been the last time Barry was out last year. But yeah, I'm loving it. And Barry, like you said, speaking of firing on all cylinders, I think these first 3 episodes they're picking up. It's like not like there is no time like between the two. It just feels like it's so seamless, and that the drama is at its peak. The comedy is at its peak. The direction, the visuals, it's all like top tier. The performances, of course. I mean, like I said, not losing a step as far as Bill Hader is concerned, or Henry Winkler and the rest of the cast. It's
NoHo Hank, my king.
Incredible. Yeah.
Him and Cristobal are so fun. Like it's so this obviously this show has gotten like, it was always dark being about a hitman serial killer, but like it's gotten significantly darker, I feel like. And
yeah,
Barry himself is like unhinged this season. So having NoHo Hank and Cristobal to help bring some levity and just like the ability to go from absolutely goofy at a Dave and Buster's to like Bill Hader having an epic meltdown in the mirror as his like mind plays tricks on it. Like it's so necessary to have that, to still be able to consider this a comedy, because that's what it is. And it is very, very twisted. So I appreciate NoHo Hank for all of that he does. Anthony Kerrigan is a star. And I will say it's so jarring to watch interviews with him and hear him not speak in his NoHo Hank accent, just have him talk like a normal dude, because that really threw me off. He has become NoHo Hank to me. That's all.
Yeah, no, he in particular, I want so badly for these people involved with the show, especially the actors, to get their due. Like, I know awards, like, they are what they are. Like, they don't really make a huge difference in the long term, but I just think that this show has been so sensational from beginning to end, and for it to, I feel like, be overlooked in pretty much all the major ways is like super sad. And I think this season especially, I mean, if it continues like this all the way to the end, I mean, we're off to such a strong start. And I think episode 3 this week was definitely the best one so far, but maybe one of the best episodes in the entire show. I'm really, really happy with it. And I forgot how much I was looking forward to this, but now that it's here, it's been a really, really good time. Just in the last week, I mean, getting 3 episodes has been great. So I'm really, really interested to see where things go from here. It's doing a lot of bold stuff already. It's kind of reminding me of Succession. It's in its last season. The gloves are off. They can really do whatever they want. And Bill Hader seems to be having a good time with that so far.
Yeah, it's scary, this version of Barry, to see him so, like he doesn't realize what he's doing was wrong, or he has no sort of moral compass. He just thinks that what he's doing is all right, and it absolutely isn't. And I like that it's seeping into Sally too. That's her name, right? Why can't I think?
Yes, Sally. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I was like, I had a mental lapse for a second, but into Sally, as she, especially in this 3rd episode, the way that her characters, now that she's taking a play out of Gene Cousineau's playbook and teaching class, and that she is so just like monumentally disturbed from everything that has happened in her life, that she just like now, pushes that off on other people, and that's just how she is. And that she gets called out by her students to be like, hey, it doesn't have to be like this. But I'm really interested to see where they go with her character as well this season.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mentioned this earlier in the group chat, but I had very mixed feelings about her character. I would say probably from the beginning of the show, but it's only got more tumultuous, obviously, as the character has gone so many different directions, and all the characters have, of course. But with her in particular, it's been kind of hard for me to gauge like how I'm supposed to feel or like what I do feel. And I like how quickly in this season we've kind of gotten to a place of it's like just sad. Like it's sad for Barry, but he's also like he was a terrible person all along. Really he was a killer. And Sally has just been kind of roped into that situation. And then, she's done some bad things, obviously not as bad as Barry, of course, not even close, but she's just a complicated character, obviously, and it's I really am curious to see now where they are positioning her like as some sort of like almost like teacher and kind of like she's getting some sort of foothold, I think, like with her career, like her acting and like what she wants to do next, how that figures into everything involving Barry and what he's going to try to do involving her. I'm very very nervous to see how that plays out, but I think that there's some interesting potential there for her, aside from everything with Barry and kind of where the character is going to end up, because in a few episodes from now, it's going to all be over and we'll have to see who's living, who's dead, and what they're all kind of set up to do after the show ends, really.
Speaking of who's living and who's dead, what a cameo filled episode. We had Fred Armisen, who is dead now, but Guillermo del Toro as well in episode 3. Seeing those two guys pop up, that was a good time. And I like the way that this episode left it hanging. And where is Barry? I thought he was gonna do the right thing and get some credit for taking out the hitman, but we'll see. It sounds like he's trying to make a break for it. But man, I'm very hooked on it. It's hard. It's I guess we can. Well, I want to talk Ted Lasso before we talk Succession, but I know I mentioned it earlier. Just that back to back, the mental. I'm so glad that Barry started the week after the Logan Roy episode, because imagine the mental state of trying to transition from one to the other. It's already hard enough, but imagine trying to do it after that. But that's what the next couple Sundays are going to be like.
They must have known, dude. They had to have known.
Oh, they absolutely knew that,
And also, they knew that all those viewers were going to be peaking after the Logan episode, so that definitely helps Barry out, I would think.
Yeah, I have to imagine that they're like, Logan Roy's going to die, and we are going to have everybody on Twitter talking about it for an hour afterwards, that they would all miss Barry if that was the case. But
yeah, absolutely.
It worked out well. But let's flip it over. Before we get to Succession, let's flip it over to Apple TV Plus. Talk a little Ted Lasso. We are at the midway point of the season. Episode 6 aired last week, called Sunflowers. A friendly match takes the team to Amsterdam, where one night out unlocks truths for many. This, I know you had said previously, Johnny, that you were avoiding any sort of like, you didn't watch a trailer, you didn't have any sort of like foresight into this season. And so for the me's out there, the people who are looking for any sort of scrap, it was long like known that they went to Amsterdam to film an episode. So this was a very like highly anticipated. Okay. There were set photos of them, like out in the streets filming, Roy and Jamie on bikes, like that sort of stuff. But just a little fun nod, because this is the Jason Sudeikis and Brennan Hunt were in a comedy troupe with Jordan Peele, no less, in Amsterdam back in the day. So kind of paying tribute, tipping the cap to their roots there. And obviously the story makes sense, bringing Richmond here for a friendly. So this episode, Johnny, I know we were kind of talking about a couple weeks ago, maybe just like this season as a whole, and trying to figure out where it's headed, what the end game is here, because this is the final season. This episode on its own, I feel like, for me at least, this is one of my favorite episodes of this whole series of all 3 seasons. I don't know if you felt the same way, but I think it had so many great moments of a lot of pairs tied together, we can get into the specifics of it, but Jamie and Roy, Colin and Trent Krim, Rebecca and her man of the night on the houseboat, Higgins and Will, Meanwhile, Ted's riding solo, but there was so much going on here that it really moved these characters. Like a lot of character development, important things happening, realizations being made, and there were a lot of very strong emotional moments for me here. But like, I don't know if you felt the same way, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts. So lay it on me.
I'm still trying to get a grasp on how I feel about the season. I know I talked about it previous episode, but I think this was definitely a good step in a better direction, I would say, for me, and like this season overall, kind of how I feel about it. I think that you know, the way they kind of split up so many different characters and had like so many different storylines going was really interesting. I feel like we've never seen this many different kind of branches within the
There
same
are a
episode.
lot of storylines. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean they even, you know, obviously it's away from England, they're in Amsterdam, but it was just like Keeley was like a complete afterthought, like not even in the episode.
And Nate
is,
too. We only got like
yeah,
1 second cameo of him.
exactly. Yeah. So all of that was kind of pushed to the side just for this like special Amsterdam episode, which I thought was cool. I think that makes sense. I lived in the Netherlands when I was a kid. I've been to Amsterdam. I thought, you know, right off the bat, they kind of got me there. I do have like fond memories and like an affinity for that like like city and like that culture. And I knew that backstory as far as the comedy troupe was concerned. So I thought that was kind of a neat little touch. But I think there was some highlights and maybe some not so highlights for me, low lights, if you will. I thought that the Jamie and Roy stuff, as usual, was really funny. I thought that that's probably been one of, if not the biggest highlight for me this season, has been the Jamie and Roy show going
Absolutely.
on. Because obviously on its own, they're funny and they are like a great duo, but knowing where they came from and how I think that this is just the culmination of that relationship and that dichotomy throughout the first two seasons. Now they're in this, still they have some, you know, just little kind of banner between them and butt heads sometimes, but there
but
is
it's
like
more like, you know, that they love each other despite it.
yeah, exactly. Like there's like a true like genuine connection and like friendship there, and I think that's like so awesome. And really, again, I think I don't know if I've said this on the show. I've probably said it in general elsewhere, but Jamie Tart has been such a great character and how he's been developed and the ups and downs and just the like dynamic with him with all the characters in the show, how that's changed and evolved has been so fun and satisfying to watch. So him and Roy in particular I thought was great. And then I was very much surprised, I would say pleasantly, by the Trent Krim reveal or development, I guess you can call it. I don't know if that was alluded to or hinted at anywhere. I can't remember anything off the top of my
There were
head.
a couple moments back in season 1, I believe, when Ted runs into him at dinner and they have that moment where like Ted orders the spicy food. I believe I know it was alluded to previously. I think it was in that scene. Like Trent had dinner with another man and like grabbed his arm as they were leaving or something. So it was like a very slight nod. And then the week before this past episode was when Trent had the rainbow "Let the Good Times Roll" coffee mug. And so people were like, oh, are they really going for this? And then obviously we get a whole lot of it. But that Colin and Trent in this episode, that was so good. Colin's speech, Billy Harris, when they finally like sit down and he opens up and he's talking about living the double life and being tired of that, just wanting to live the one life, not having to hide who he is, wanting to be able to kiss his fella just like everybody else kisses their girl after the game. It was a tearjerker, man. And then hearing him and Trent just like open up to each other, talk about it, like that's, nobody would have ever expected this sort of relationship between them. I would never have expected a Trent and Colin episode like this, but I'm so glad that we got it because Billy Harris and James Lance, the two actors, are absolutely fantastic together. And to see it go from the, you know, resistance to opening up and having this connection, and then like them just going out and finally getting to have a good time together, like completely platonic, obviously, but like just Colin feeling comfortable enough to open up and do this with someone that he knows. Like it was so heartwarming for me to be able to see this, because it's been a long time coming for him with all the hints at his sexuality, and then getting the confirmation earlier in the season and kind of going away from that to finally get back and open it up here.
Yeah, no, I again, I think that was definitely a highlight for me this episode, and all your points I think were pretty valid. Just a nice, I think for me the biggest reason I liked it was because um it was a good, I think, resolution, I guess in some ways, or tie up with the whole what the hell's going on with Trent Krim like situation, and like what is he gonna do about the call-in like knowledge that he has. I was just feeling very shaky about that, I guess, and like not sure how that was going to develop. So I was pleasantly surprised to see that. Oh, okay, this is actually a good thing. This is actually a beneficial situation for Colin to have someone like this he can confide in and like talk to about it. So yeah, that was really nice and pleasant. And I think so for me, it was kind of like Jamie and Roy was the highlight on a maybe more comedic level, even though there were some nice emotional moments with them as well. And then flip side was the emotional stuff with Colin and Trent, although there was some funny stuff in there as well, which I thought was great. Like the bar stuff that kind of started the their interaction and whatnot. I thought that was all really good. So for me, those were definitely the highlights. And then I don't know, I'm still what was that whole thing with like I think the Higgins like subplot, like with Higgins and like the guy that does the
And
cleats
Will the kit man. Yeah. It was I thought it was hysterical at first with the like, oh my God, Higgins is going to the red light district. Like that's the intention of it. To be shocked and then saying that Will's going to become a man, and then to see that it turns out being all about jazz. And we obviously have seen in season 1 Higgins playing the double bass and recurring moments of him being all about jazz and the music, and to see him kind of get to have this moment. I'm curious if it was like I remember when The Office was having its final season that they basically asked the cast like, hey, is there one thing that you want to do, like that you really want your character to be able to do this season? And I'm curious if it was a similar sort of thing. To be like Higgins wants to perform on stage, and like because he actually does, that's actually him in real life, like he does play the double bass. He's like all about jazz music. So I thought that was fun. And then I just love the way that Will has been such a like, he's barely ever there, but when he is, it's just like the most absurd thing you've ever heard. When he's on the phone at the end of the episode with his mom telling her about, oh, and then I met this very lovely couple and they invited me for a threesome. Like it's just so ridiculous every time he opens his mouth. And I think it's a good, like, what the hell moment that's kind of just like offsets any sort of, it acts as a balance to some of the more serious moments. But that was like, I still enjoyed that. That was probably the least of the storylines. Like you said, there are a lot in this. Jamie and Roy, we already talked about. Colin and Trent. I'm curious, what were your thoughts? We've got a couple big ones here with Rebecca on the houseboat with her man, Ted thinking he's on, I don't know, mushrooms, acid, whatever sort of concoction Coach Beard had cooked up. And then the team themselves, when they're sitting in the hotel lobby trying to figure out what to do. I'll let you, which one would you like to discuss here?
Oh man. Well, I've been given all my highlights. I feel like I need to get a little bit negative here with my thoughts. So I will say that and I'm curious to hear what you think, the Rebecca subplot this episode with the houseboat and the romantic situation there, or quasi-romantic, I guess you could say, at least. Like, what did you make of that? Or I guess in general, how do you feel like that plays into, and what are your thoughts on Rebecca's subplot, like for the season overall up to this point?
I feel like I enjoyed it. I thought it was very like cute and charming. I don't think it's I don't
it was giving Hallmark movie.
Yeah, I could see that. It was also interesting because I thought this was cute and charming when I watched it, and then I watched it again with Rebecca, and as a woman, she was like, why is she doing all of it, like going into this random person's house and like taking a shower there, staying, drinking tea, like it was like a lot more questionable things that like as a man I did not think of. I was like, oh, they're cute, but I thought that
Interesting.
I thought that the chemistry between them was fun, and I liked like I liked that it was a very romantic moment, but it was not like a hook. We learned that they didn't hook up, like, but
Mhm.
then, and I loved the line at the end, like, did we? No, we didn't. And then when she leaves, he says, yes, we did, as in like, yes, we had magic, we had sparks, we
Yeah.
fell in love, whatever. And the whole like not telling each other their names throughout the night, that it was just all in the moment. There's not going to be a future, there's not a past. It was just a like
Yeah.
passing ships in the night kind of thing.
Mhm.
And so I really admired all of that. I thought that was fun. I
Right.
think as a whole, though, I think this just works as like a wipe the slate clean for Rebecca. Like, she had this night.
Mhm.
Sam gone, like, is gone from her mind. She's not still. I don't know. I feel like because she had the whole green matchbook thing, and that like put her back on Sam for a moment.
Yeah, what the hell's going on with all that?
And
Like,
because it hasn't really come up at any point, and I don't think
no.
it's not going to be. I don't know. It's not going to be a continuation, I don't think. But it seems weird if they're like, oh, here's a green matchbook. Wait, but here's this Dutch man.
Mhm.
But I feel like it's kind of like a clean slate for Rebecca. We get her at the end of the episode, like, don't worry about a thing. She's singing it on the bus. Like, she gives Ted a smile. Like, I think what was interesting though about this is that Ted's 12 texts or whatever to Rebecca, like, that was some thirst, my guy. I know I've always seen it as a very platonic best friend soulmate type relationship, nothing romantic.
Right.
But I don't know if he was just lonely or if he was just like, okay, beard's out, everybody, like, I want to hang out with somebody, but like get the message, man. Like, even if her phone wasn't at the bottom of the canal, she was ignoring you.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, it is weird. I don't know what to make of that either. I'm not so sure. I think it is interesting that you mentioned like the whole thing with Rebecca watching it and kind of how she interpreted it. Like, I can't remember. I'd have to go back and see like who wrote the episode and whatnot. But yeah, it is interesting. Just I think in
It was
general,
Brendan Hunt, Coach Beard wrote the episode.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. I don't know. This season I feel like has been. I mean, I've already said I've been kind of like lukewarm on it, I think overall, but I've been especially like kind of off put by like what's going on with Rebecca and Keely in particular, I think, because Rebecca seemed to be going like a certain direction or like becoming like more empowered and pushing away from all the stuff that had happened in her past with, God, what's his name? Her ex-husband. Rupert, and Sam was like a whole thing that went down and that was kind of like cleaned up a little bit and then she was moving on from that. And then this season just seems it's like throwing all of that back on her. And I know that like they're probably trying to build to some sort of grand kind of finale with her and moving on, being free of any feelings and kind of like, I guess, resentment and also regret and all these other like emotions with regards to Rupert and maybe Sam as well. But I don't know. It's just like, I just feel like it's kind of like treading water, like maybe retreading like some of the same like things that we've been exploring so far. I mean, it's kind of, I can get it in one respect that like that's kind of how life is. Like you do go through those different cycles and you go back to certain like notions or ideas and like emotions as you kind of go, through relationships and the aftermath and whatnot. But yeah, I don't know. I'm just curious. Again, it's kind of hard to say because you got to see the full picture of the season before I can really judge it. But I just think up to this point, again, season overall, I've been kind of like hit or miss, or like kind of, here and there on. But I think with Rebecca in particular and like Keely to some degree as well, just been kind of not really sure what to make of it because it's been so much about like the romantic side of things. Like Keely started with Jamie and then she went to Roy and then she went away from Roy and then she's like tossy turvy, like when it comes to Roy versus Jamie. And then she is also with Jack and there's just all these different things going on. So it's hard to get a gauge of like what they're going for with her. And then the same thing is with like Rebecca to some extent. Like it's been Rupert and then Sam and then there's this weird thing with Ted, like what is going on? Like there's nothing she's really showing or like reciprocating with him, but they're like putting Ted like onto her to some degree.
They have 100% formed these like connections, like especially in the, I guess, last episode before this was when they were walking down the hall and Ted had heard,
Yes.
what did he say? He said something
Yes.
about being psychic, and she said something about being I can't remember what she said, but it was like directly
Yeah.
both of them like relating to something they had just heard.
Yeah.
So they're very much like making you look this way. And I keep going back to one of the things that 2 years ago when I was first interviewing Brendan Hunt, he was talking about we like to zig when you think we're gonna zag. And so like that's why I've always been like patient with this show, because I feel like they do a lot of like making you think it's gonna go one way to then pull out a different alternate ending or something, because I keep waiting for the obvious is we get the message from the psychic that was talking about that okay, you're like, we got the green matchbook, that's going to be a thing. We got what did the guy say, the old guy that she had dated when they saw her at the coffee shop, about, or a shite in nining armor or whatever. Like the things keep coming true, and so we have the next one would be that she's going to be a mother, and so people are making the prediction like, oh, she's going to fall for Ted and she's going to become Henry's adoptive mother. That's the zig. They're going to zag. I'm not buying that. And I keep waiting for it. I don't know how it's going to happen, but I keep waiting for Sassy to die, which sounds very dramatic and very out of left field. But I think she's going to become the mother to Nora that we got from season 1 when she gets the like weekend away when Nora comes to stay with her or whatever.
Yeah.
As the godmother. And I feel like that's so dramatic and like a very dark twist if Sassy were to literally die. But there's not like, I don't know.
That is an interesting idea. I'd not thought of that in particular, like either of those ideas, Ted and then Sassy, like and how their children could factor in. Honestly, I feel like maybe my interpretation or hope, I guess, maybe my wishful thinking is that they are teeing it up like it's some sort of motherhood, kind of motherly kind of situation with her. And my hope is that they don't put that onto her like that. My hope is that they kind of like leave it where she doesn't need that necessarily to like be happy or like feel like fulfillment, I guess. Cause it's like, it is kind of weird. Like she is in this position where like Rebecca, she has to see like Rupert go through, you know, his new relationship and pursue like the younger, you know, woman and get a new child. And like, I mean, Hannah Waddingham, like she's like, you know, I think I can't remember how old she is, but she's obviously not like in a traditional like sense of like being able to like have children and that sort of thing. So I am wondering like what is the end game with that? And you bring up some interesting theories, but I'm just very like, I feel like the zag would be like to go away from that or like put like a pin in it where it's like it's not actually what matters.
There's no, like, we obviously have seen the green matchbook and the shite and nining armor, like those things have happened, but it's literally a psychic. There is no rule that all of the things have to come true. So this could be just some massive red herring that like we're just eating it up because okay, 1 and 2 happened, so we have to have everything else happen. It's a psychic, like it's not real.
Exactly.
So it could just be a whole lot of hubbub for nothing. But
it probably is, honestly, but
that's the zag. But I do love we know Rebecca wants to be a mom. She's got this urge, and we saw an episode before when we didn't get confirmation, but it seemed like she got not great news about her prospects to still have a child at her age.
Has Ted Lasso pretty famous and like I feel like is known for their needle drops. Have they ever done the Rolling? I feel like they may have at some point the Rolling Stones song "You Can't Always Get What You Want." I feel like they must have done that at some point. I feel like that's, if they haven't, I feel like they either have to do it or they need to bring it back before the end of the show.
It was on the trailer for season 3.
That's right. Yeah.
So
that'd be kind of fun.
That could be like the overarching theme of this season, I guess.
Dang, yeah, I didn't even think about that.
But you get what you need. That's what the whole song is about. So
you get what you need.
So
what do they need? That's the question.
that is a great question, and I think we know what Rebecca wants. What will she get? What will she need? And Ted wants to go to coach this team, but needs to go home and be with his family. I feel like that's where we're headed there. But to wrap up Ted, I know we talked about Jamie and Roy, talked about Colin Trent. We haven't talked about Ted yet. So I want to talk about him briefly and then a quick touch. I guess I'll touch on the team before we get into Ted, because Ted might be a little longer. I loved the team in the lobby. I thought it was hysterical, the voting back and forth. I said it on my Instagram story, but you mentioned Phil Dunster, Jamie Tart. He has been fantastic throughout this season. My sleeper pick, my dark horse for MVP through the first half of the season is Danny Rojas, because Cristo Fernandez has been absolutely hysterical from, early on with his fuck off Trent Krim in the locker room. That had me cackling. He's grown, not Danny. Well, Danny as a character, but also Cristo as an actor has gotten so much more comfortable, and the comedic timing, it's so much more than just Danny go be happy, say football is life. He's like crushing these little moments, and him talking about the tulip in this episode and voting for that, I was literally laughing my head off. I think he's so good when he goes,
literally,
oh, but yes, someone voted for tulip, I believe, but who? I'm like, the inflection, the timing of it all was so funny. I hope he got to see a tulip at some point. But to really get I just to like bring all of that home, their big war between sex show and this private party. Also so weird that Zorro, aka Van Damme, really was so intent on a sex show. My guy I thought he was getting into something completely different. But to wrap it all up with the pillow fight, great callback to the first season. Ted threw that out there before they had a team movie night, saying that they could either have a pillow fight or a team movie night. Everybody picks movie night. And he says, if you just picked pillow fight once, we would never watch a movie again. And I tweeted about this, about being sad that Ted wasn't there. Like, yes, I'm sad, but I also completely understand the reasoning why he was not there, because this is just showing how much that Ted, through the Lasso way, has infected this team, spread his ideas, his positivity, and that Ted didn't need to be there to suggest it. The team came to it on their own and had fun doing it. That's just how much this culture has changed since season 1. So I thought that was a great way to connect back to season 1 and kind of continue to show this arc and his impact. But Ted on his own, I thought we were going to get an absolutely stoned out of his mind Jason Sudeikis in Amsterdam. We think we're getting that as Ted goes on this journey, but then it turns out it's a dud batch. But Ted still has some sort of, out of body experience as he figures out the way that he's going to run this team. He has a great moment at the art show when he meets the random stranger who tells him about the sunflower and the meaning behind that. And then we get the taste of home at the, what was it called? Yankee Doodle Burger Barn. I thought that was a very fun experience to see him it gave me like Ratatouille vibes when Remy tastes the food and gets the flavor explosions. But seeing when Ted has the breakdown of the different triangles and everything, and it's going through the history of the triangle and soccer and all of that.
Yeah,
I thought this was a very cool experience. And then to learn it wasn't because he was high. It was just Ted experiencing this.
Yeah,
it
agreed.
worked really well for me.
I thought that was a pretty fun element, especially the punchline really to all of it is that he didn't come up with anything or come up with
He thought he did. He thought he was really cooking.
Yeah, no, he really, I was thinking that the whole episode, I was like, wait, what? And so I love that they did deliver that at the end with the beard, cutting his legs off with that. I thought that was really funny. And then also, yeah, I like the visual, I like how they were playing with that. I thought that was particularly fun and kind of inspired. And for me, I also wanted to highlight, just as a kind of something I caught on to, was I did like that whole restaurant setup. I thought it was super funny, and kind of how like the first person he spoke to, like when he came in, like they were trying to figure out like what he wanted, and he had to like over explain like which section he wanted to be in, and they had no idea. And then also it was very much going for uh a Pulp Fiction homage or reference with the song that was playing as they were walking him
I
in and
saw
walking
that,
him to his
yeah.
table. I thought that was a kind of a fun touch, and again, I'm a big Pulp Fiction and Tarantino fan, of course, so I thought that was a nice nod there. But yeah, I thought that was, again, not necessarily like a wildly impressive or like super fun highlight for me out of the episode, but it was a interesting direction, I think, to take Ted and give him something to do in the meantime. And we got a little appearance from Nate, as you mentioned earlier, as well. So
Howdy,
always fun
Ted.
there.
I loved to wrap up the Lasso talk. I thought Ted's line at the very end when they're all on the bus, and he is explaining the premise of, I don't remember what he had called it, but total football. And he says, our guys need freedom, go wherever they want to go, follow their guts, their hearts, as long as they remember to fill in the space that someone left behind. They've got to have one another's backs, that's for sure. And I thought that was a great way to wrap up this episode, because we see so much of Jamie and Roy having each other's backs, Colin and Trent, the team as a whole coming to a conclusion, coming to a decision, Will and Higgins, like all of these pairs having the best intentions of everybody else in mind. I think that it was a great way to show, again, the Lasso way, the effect that Ted has had on this team, on this organization. Ted still might worry about that, but it's absolutely there, whether everybody can see it or not. And I thought that was a great way to just wrap up the episode.
Yeah, agreed. I thought the way they actually closed it out on the bus and whatnot was a good kind of punctuation to the episode that had so many different strings and subplots all separate and all tied together at the end. I thought that was nice. So
a little throwback to Beard After Hours too, as we don't get the full details, but just the remnants of a wild night out for Beard as he gets back on the bus. So
yeah, you can imagine what it was like to some extent.
Yeah, and him talking in Dutch and saying, "Don't tell Jan," that he actually secretly knows Dutch. But switching from Apple back to HBO, Succession, two absolute heaters of episodes. Episodes 4 and 5, Honeymoon States and Kill List. We're entering a post-Logan Roy era in which Waystar is looking for new leadership. And is this sale still going to happen? The first episode, episode 4, immediately followed in the day after Logan's death, and they're trying to figure out who's going to take the reins, who's going to step up. As the Waystar team discusses a pivotal recommendation to the board, Roman, Kendall, and Shiv navigate a misstep with Matsson. The big storyline here is this piece of paper and Logan's, I guess it's not really a will, but his intentions, what he would like to see happen. Nobody knows when it happened or when he wrote it, but was Kendall's name crossed out? Was it underlined? Who knows? But that's the big story there. And then in the following week, this past episode, episode 5, after the Waystar team heads to Norway, Shiv, Kendall, and Roman consider whether to fight for Logan's crown jewel. So once they sort out everything of who's going to lead the company, do we even keep the company, or are we moving forward with the sale with Matsson? Two fantastic episodes. I like this show week after week continues to be the best show on television. It is operating at the highest capacity. It is so freaking good, Johnny.
Can't disagree. Like you said, heaters, just like the standard at this point for Succession. We already knew that, but very interested to see kind of in the wake of Logan's death how they were going to, move the story forward. Where's the conflict going to come from? And in the Honeymoon States episode 4, they did a good job. They literally are kind of, I don't want to say it wasn't actually, I don't think like I wouldn't classify it as maybe a wake necessarily, but they were at this kind of big gathering at Logan's house. Marcia returns from her shopping in Milan, and we got some other faces, and Carrie kind of shows up maybe for the last time, I would expect. And everyone's kind of positioning themselves. Stewie shows up.
just lots of movement as far as kind of who is going to take over. They have to have a decision on that day, but within the next couple of hours, I think it was. And yeah, a lot of interesting maneuvering. And I think, again, still with all the drama, with all the emotions, still some of the funniest lines and moments really like in the show. I don't know how they do it. It's honestly one of the most, I mean, it's a brilliant show in so many different ways, but I think just overall, it's like one of the like funniest shows and just most well-written shows, period, that I've seen. And it just continues, even when you think Logan being out would be a huge loss as far as like the story and feeling the weight of that, they still managed to keep it going, 2 episodes later. And we only have 5 to go. We're at the halfway point after last night's episode. So,
man, Alexander Skarsgård stepping in immediately to fill the shoes of Logan as like the antagonist. You would, like you said, you would think it would be a big drop off or something, losing such a monumental figure, but
right.
It lost absolutely zero momentum. This episode last night, the 5th one, Kill List, was so like exhilarating to watch. We learned in 4 that, okay, Kendall and Roman are stepping up. Shiv will still be very much included, but we knew that wasn't really going to be the case. And then these two try to pull a fast one. Okay, we're going to sabotage this deal so that we can still run this company. But at the same time, Shiv is the one who's actually pulling the strings. And I saw a tweet that was talking about how Kendall and Roman were so concerned with what Logan would do, trying to figure it out, but Shiv did what he would do. Like, she wasn't talking about it, thinking about it. She had her best interest in mind and actually took action on it, manipulating Matsson, like screwing over her brothers along the way, and pulling Tom back into the fold, all within a 24-hour period. Like, just a masterclass of finesse from the character Shiv, but also from Sarah Snook, with her, what was it, the barnacle meat, is that what Tom called it? Her earlobes. Like, that's just a perfect example of what you talked about with the humor mixed into this show. I think Matsson had some great roasts. His lines, like talking about the Hanna-Barbera Business School, Scooby-Dooing
tribute band.
The tribute band was an absolute like that was such a good line.
Brutal.
To just devastate them. Cousin Greg trying to make conversation and work his way in. Tom fighting for his life, talking about if France is going to make it or not, like trying to figure out what does that mean.
Yeah, that was hilarious.
I loved the episode's called Kill List. There's a kill list that once Matsson takes over, who's going to get replaced by the Gojo team, who's going to still be sticking around from the Waystar Royco side, and to see all of the village elders, as Matsson called them, scramble to try and figure out who their competition is. Like, who is Gojo's Carolina, and to see them kind of face off and try and weasel their way in. It was funny to watch everybody scramble and to find out at the end that it's just Carolina and Jerry who make the cut. Meanwhile, poor Hugo's kicked to the curb. Carl and Frank seem to be at peace with them moving on. We'll see. But I think it was so good. It was I'm excited to see, Kendall and Roman got this great deal. They're being congratulated like kings, but it's not what they wanted whatsoever. So I'm interested to see how far they go with Shiv and with the board having to report to the board. Like, they can't, if they make a stink out of it, the board will go away from them essentially, and they'll lose everything. So it's a very fine line of trying to get what they want, but also appease who they need to please.
Would you say it's a tightrope walk on a razor's edge?
That's so true, Johnny. Did you come up with that?
As Kendall put it this episode. Yeah, no, it's been, I think there was a really good just 1-2 punch. Like I said, in the wake of Logan's death, we got the immediate aftermath, and people have pointed this out multiple times. I tweeted about it when Brian Cox mentioned it after his grand finale episode. This season takes place over the course of 10 consecutive days, and each episode is a single day, basically, in the life of these characters. So we got the immediate, 24 hours, the immediate aftermath in episode 4. A lot more, I think, emotions there, as far as kind of, the actual knowledge of what just happened, and then also what you have to do next to take over, at least fight for that position, and also the drama surrounding the letter and what that means to Kendall, and then also the sparks of friction that causes between him and his siblings, and then also even the old guard. So that was really strong. I think I think that was super gratifying in the respect that I think a lot of people, even despite everything that we've seen and have gotten to experience with Kendall and all these characters, that you still kind of want to see Kendall kind of get it, or like get some sort of gratification, because since the pilot episode, the expectation was always in place that he was the one that was going to take over. And so to see that there was some hope, some twinkle of a notion that he might be able to take over, that even not only that he might take over, that Logan possibly wanted him to take over at some point, was kind of nice and gratifying, I think, for me at least. And then
we also got speaking of Kendall and Succession, the opener, when it was a throwback to the very first episode, we see Kendall coming into work, jamming out in the car, and they talked about it in the post breakdown, where it's like, that's the same thing. He thinks he's coming in to take over again, and then gets this last minute trip, this carpet pulled out from under him as he's once again passed over.
I clocked that right away. I was like, oh my god, this is just like the first episode. And then I also loved, oh man, did you notice I'm sure you did, it has the music in the car, and then when he gets out, it switches to Nicholas Britell doing like some like kind of hip-hop arrangement of the Succession theme.
That was nice,
which I thought was really, really cool. And then, I mean, like you said, it just, the rug is taken out from under him, and Roman as well, and Shiv to some degree. They're still having to go to this retreat. They have to leave the country. It's only been, less than 48 hours basically at this point, from the time that they have to head out. And I love, it just seems like it's funny because it's, they fly out there, and then they have to, like, they're preparing themselves. They're ready to go into this meeting. And then again, the rug is kind of pulled out from under them, because he's like, oh, Alexander Skarsgård's character, Mattson, he's like, oh, I wasn't that prepared. Just kind of like, just wanted to meet you guys one-on-one. I didn't have like a whole team, like, prepared to sit down and negotiate. And so the negotiation is just kind of it's
a conversation. It's
just a standard conversation, bang, bang, back and forth. You need to say something, I say something, as Mattson says. Like, it's almost too simple, I would say. And from their point of view, they overthought it almost. And like you said, Shiv seems to be the one who's playing it cool, like Logan would. She's not getting so caught up in the numbers and the minutia. She's thinking almost a little bit more big picture, and thinking like about the personality almost that she's dealing with in Mattson, more than she is the culture, let's say, behind his company that's trying to take them over. And so I thought, I think that's a great point. And from what we see coming next episode, it looks like, I thought it was funny. They were talking more and more about the movie division, I think, in this episode. And
the MCU-esque movie.
I thought it was hilarious the way they were screening. It reminded me, it was giving me like Justice League, like Joss Whedon vibes. They're like, oh yeah, the third act is just complete nonsense. Or like, it's not good, it's not ready, and they have to finish the effects, and it just sounds so horrible from like a movie critic like perspective, or like someone that covers movies. I love that they use that as like a weapon almost to like put Mattson off from the deal. And it looks like next week, like I was alluding to, they're going to continue to go down that path. They're actually going to go to Waystar like Studios or whatever it's called, and there's going to be some sort of press event there. It looks like that things could get in a more high profile sense. Things could get kind of out of control depending on what Kendall decides to do, how Roman's feeling. There's a lot of, again, balls kind of juggling in the air, but they're coming back stateside and doing some more business stuff at this big event. So, we'll see. I think this could be like one of the last big events that we get like in the show, I would think, at least from like a corporate kind of perspective. not really sure what else they'll have, like obviously coming down the pipeline, but we know we'll get the election at some point. We'll get
Connor for president, baby.
Connor for
Oh,
president.
also that whole
That
side,
was
it was very
hilarious.
quick, but it was hysterical of him trying to figure. It's like, do I have free reign to go carte blanche with dad as they're trying to figure out what to dress him in for his memorial?
He's so sick of being blamed for everything. Like he does not want to get caught in the like. He doesn't want to be seen as the guy that messed up dad's funeral. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's obviously that's a heavy weight. But yeah, I thought that was so funny, and like the way it's interesting because in a way Connor inadvertently makes the deal kind of happen because it's his untimely sending of the message with the photo that kind of upsets and like sets off Roman and
Right.
rekindles that anger and those negative feelings that causes him to lash out at Mattson, which in turn leaves Mattson upping the price for the deal. So I thought the way that all kind of came back, it was funny, but then the way it kind of comes back and actually affects what happens, I thought was also very, very clever. So yeah, again, a great episode. I loved seeing all the corporate mingling and just one more last, I mean, again, we don't know what's coming in the next few episodes, but at least one last taste of what that looks like. Cause we've seen so many of those throughout the years, with Pierce, the Pierce deal and other conferences and things that they've gone to. I thought that was nice to get back to a setting like that. And also Norway was an outstanding location, beautiful vistas and
the culture clash of it all. I thought it was hysterical to see the Gojo team being like, leave some for the rest of us to Hugo, as they're like all the Americans are like forking all this food onto their plates.
Yeah.
It was very funny. But before we wrap up Succession, stock up, stock down. We're at the halfway point. We don't know what's going to happen. Stock up in a competitive sense, not a narrative sense. But man, Kieran Culkin has been bringing it this season. And I am here for it. I am all on board. I want to see him get some love, some awards. He's been fantastic. Sarah Snook as well. Everybody across the board is great, but especially in this last episode when what you were just alluding to, him like snapping on Mattson was epic. Stock up within the show. I'm going Shiv. Like we said earlier, she's pulling the strings again. Stock down. I mean, I guess Kendall. I don't know. I guess him and Roman are both in a similar bad position within the world of the show. So we'll see.
Yeah, your contradictory picks there. I will say I gotta go up with Shiv. I think what she showed that she has the goods this episode. She was able to corner and legitimately make some headway with Mattson, I think. She was lashing out at Tom somewhat, like giving him some of the business, and making her feelings known there. And, she was the one smiling at the end when she was getting the picture of her brothers and sending it to Mattson. So, I think she's in a great position. It was her. I mean, it was literally her smiling was the last shot of the episode. So,
which
again,
Kendall smiling was the episode before. When is Roman going to smile?
Yeah, we need him to smile at some point. He's such a sad boy this season. I feel very good. I think honestly, out of all the siblings, I feel like the most optimistic about Shiv. Like genuinely, like where she's gonna end up, I feel like she'll be in the best quote unquote position. I feel like Roman and Kendall are such live wires. It just feels like they have a lot more risk involved with them. Like I would not feel super comfortable buying their stock. And then I would say for a character down, I guess I would have to say Mattson a little bit. I think the episode started with me feeling really confident and like he was still in his kind of killer mentality. Like all the chips were pushed
Shiv's
in.
got him locked up now.
Yeah, no, Shiv with the moves she made and how he clearly is... He's unhinged to some degree. Like he has some issues there, and he just is such a weird, freakish like personality. Sending blood to his direct reports, as they said.
I think that he's too, as soon as he started talking and started getting into that story, I was like, okay, he's done. Nope. He's not gonna get, like, I think everything he wants. And I think he's going to be in a very kind of vulnerable position sooner or later. So I would say Mattson. I'm not even convinced that they're going to, obviously the deal, it's like up to Roman and Kendall. So they'll have to decide, I think, to some extent, but they'll be able to blow it up or see what the board says. But I think that Mattson, even if the deal does go through, like in my own head, like in the world of the show, I don't think he has what it takes to really make everything happen. I think he's someone that I could see falling off and going into the bad realms of obscurity if you were to leave like his position. So yeah, that's who I would choose.
There you have it. Halfway through Succession, the final season.
Oh, don't say that.
Man, Sundays are gonna get a whole lot more sad when this wraps up. But we've still got 5 weeks left and some Barry as well. But let's shift over to the big screen for our Beau Is Afraid review. Here we are for yet another movie from Ari Aster. Beau Is Afraid is the third film following up Hereditary and Midsummer, which are two movies that Johnny and I love dearly. And this is it's hard to follow up two movies that are that great. And this is a very large shift. Those two disturbing horror movies to now go to this dark comedy 3-hour epic. I don't know how else you would describe it without just getting fully into it, but this was quite the experience, Johnny, wasn't it?
Oh man, nothing like it, honestly. It's yeah, I mean, it's gonna be very interesting to try to talk about this movie, but yeah, it was an experience. I mean, there's no other way to put it, positive or negative.
Well, let's set the foundation before we get into it. Joaquin Phoenix, Nathan Lane, Amy Ryan, Parker Posey, Patti LuPone, Stephen McKinley Henderson make up the main cast here. It's currently sitting at, let's see, I need to update this because this was from last week, but on Rotten Tomatoes, let's see. Beau Is Afraid. It was looking pretty good, and I was kind of surprised by that. But let's see if it holds up. 69% critic score and a 73% audience score.
Wow.
If I were to guess what this would be as an audience score, I would not say that it would be 73%, Johnny.
How many ratings does it say?
Let's see. 100 plus. So not a ton, but
Not
still
a ton.
not, we're not in the thousands or anything, but still that's higher than expected. I would not expect the audience score to be higher than the critic score on this. My score, this was a tough one because, like I said a minute ago, it's 3 hours. It's this sprawling story. And if it was just the first hour, I'd be like at a solid 4 out of 5. If it was just the first 2 hours, I'd be at a solid like 3.5 out of 5. But 3 hours, I came in at a 2.5 out of 5. There was a lot I liked about this movie and a lot I didn't like, and it just didn't work for me. And I ended up right here at a 52 out of 100, pretty much smack dab in the middle. Johnny, I know you were upwards of 4 stars. You were 4.5 stars on Letterboxd.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's a lot of movie, but I cannot stop thinking about it. I mean, we saw it just about a week ago now, and I've just been looking for people's takes, their not even analyses, but just their thoughts and what they've been able to piece together just about their own interpretations. And it's just one of those movies. I know we're very different on this as far as the spectrum and our tastes, I guess you could say, is associated with this, but like absurdism, surrealism is one of my favorite like, I guess I wouldn't even call it a genre, but just like forms of like art. And I think that I'm a big David Lynch fan. Twin Peaks probably the best TV show ever made. I loved I think what the hell's the name of that movie? I think we should end things. I'm thinking of ending things. I'm thinking of ending things. Just movies that are like Enemy by Denis Villeneuve.
Surrealism. I like Enemy. Don't throw that one in here.
So there's just a lot I mean, I could think of a million more, I'm sure, but like I just love those movies that they're ambiguous as to like the actual events and what everything means and the symbolism to tell the story. Like just something that's so like not straightforward and like really works more so in like the vein of like images and like tone and atmosphere. And I think this movie is just a great like mixture of all those things that just really appeal to my senses. So I totally understand people that don't love this movie, that don't like this movie. But for me, from the performances to the art direction, the writing, just like I don't even know, it's hard to determine or like describe the structure of the movie even, but just the way the screenplay kind of lays everything out. It's just such a, like, for me, I mentioned this, or I said this to you, I think last week, Zach, but I was pretty tired, like going into the screening. It was a long day of work. It was a long day of work the day before. I was excited, but I was like, gosh, I hope I can hang in there. And I knew it was going to be long. I knew it was going to be kind of arduous at times, but there were some times I will say it was a little bit more on the downside for me. That's why I wouldn't call this movie a masterpiece personally. I wouldn't say it was like a 5 out of 5, but I really, really loved it. And I thought it was like incredible. Like, I just think it was such an incredible feat of cinematic like artistry. And, maybe if I go back and watch it, which I do plan on doing before it leaves theaters, maybe my feelings will change. Maybe they'll be a little bit more negative, or I'll feel a little bit more timid about certain things in the movie, or maybe I'll appreciate it even more and maybe like it even more, closer to that like masterpiece like level. So, yeah, I think I will not diss you, Zach. I'm not gonna sit here and
I
say you're
appreciate
wrong.
that.
Because I think you're totally entitled, obviously, and not wrong with some of your feelings about it. But I think I would still say though, people should go check this movie out. Especially if you like Hereditary, Midsommar. It's very different compared to those. But I think if you can handle some of the weirdness and some of the surrealistic like elements of those movies in particular, I think that you'll be able to hang with large stretches of this movie, I think. But it is still very different. Zach, how would you say, as someone that loved those movies, what would you say the things that stuck out to you, like that were most like positive about this movie, especially like in connection with like Aster as like an artist that we've seen so far, but then also things that you felt were like a little too much or maybe astray from what you were wanting or hoping to see necessarily?
Yeah, it's very, very, very different from those two. Those are very dark, disturbing horror movies, very unsettling. This is unsettling in a different way because it's just like so off-putting and strange. But like that's the intention. I feel like there were times though where, like, as you pointed out, like surrealism is not really my thing. It doesn't, like, a lot of I was very nervous for this movie because of that. Like, having seen the trailer, I was like, this is I don't know about this one. And
Yeah.
that came to be, I was very surprised at like that I was very into it for that first hour. It worked really well for me because it was a lot of like ridiculousness, but like with a very like tangible plot. Like, we're okay, Beau like had this accident, he's trying to get to his mom, like this is what needs to happen. His mom has died now and he is unable to get there because he is at this place with Nathan Lane and Amy Ryan. And like that's like the foundation. Like, crazy shit is happening all around him during this, but like I still had something like firm to grasp. And so I was able to like appreciate, I don't know, that helped me stay grounded despite everything that was going on. And so it never like became overbearing or I'd ever like felt too lost within it. And then as we get to that second act, it's hard to say second act because as we were talking after,
it's not even really like,
it's really
it's
like
hard.
five-ish sections of different like
Agreed
elements that you could break this down into. But like when you get more towards like that second hour, I guess, if we'll just go with the time, and we're like in the forest and there's the like theater troupe type thing, then it's like starts to get even more, out there. And I feel like at times it like, especially in the third hour, it's almost like weird for the sake of being like I don't know if I'm like not able to keep up, but like it to me there were moments where it's like, okay, now we're just like this, we're just doing this. We're just having a giant penis monster. Like, not to say that anything was believable in this movie, but like it gets to a point where it's like, okay, so now we're just doing this. And it's like we
Yeah.
know Ari Aster is fucked up and has like these crazy ideas and visions and stuff. Like, and it seems like, okay, so we're just gonna like throw it all in here. And whereas in that first part, I like had the foundation of like this story and like here's what's happened. And it was like it just kind of became, okay, now we're just being weird to be weird. And
Yeah.
that's where it kind of lost me. I think, you know, the second hour I was able to still, I think there was a ton of really cool artistic visual stuff. Like there's this animated sequence essentially in like a very like stage play-esque
Yeah.
that is beautiful. The story was losing me at that point, but I was still hooked in just because of those two elements. And then it kind of went off the rails for me. And that third hour, I also don't think I knew it was a long movie. I don't think I knew going in that it was like 3 hours actually. And
Yeah,
so
literally.
I was kind of like, there were multiple different moments where it's like, this could be the end. And then it kind of just keeps going. And so I was like, okay, especially as I was like losing focus, like, you know, less interested towards the end, I was like, okay, when are we going to wrap this thing up? But one of the things that was interesting is that like, when we were talking about it afterwards, I asked you the question, and I don't think you had an answer at that time. I don't know if you have now that you've thought about it more, but I was wondering like, how much of this are we supposed to take as real? I know it's very early, like it's set up very early that Beau has a whole lot of like different medical conditions and like mental health issues. He's taking all these medications. Like
God, it's so
there's
freaking funny, dude.
there's so much that is like there's no line between like what is real and where reality ends and like stuff that's maybe going on in his head begins. And so like as things continue to happen, like there's this essentially like a mass shooting massacre in the forest during that second hour going on the third hour. And it's like, okay, so like among other things, like obviously the penis monster thing was like, it presents it as if it's real. There's no sense, like there is no point where they're like, that was just in Beau's head. Like you would think it wasn't real, but like in the world of this movie, who knows? I don't, that was a part for me where I was like just unable to keep up with
I think
everything going on.
that's fair. I will say, just to like not even counter that, but just as a thought, and to hear what you think. Like, do you think maybe part of your, I guess maybe lack of enjoyment when watching those types of movies, and this movie in particular, is like trying to like discern like reality and like what should be considered literal or real versus what isn't?
I feel like that's
Overall.
with this whole like type of filmmaking. It's like the way that I'm wired is like I need to. It just like doesn't work as well for me because I
You
need
need
to
something
know.
concrete.
Yes, and it's like again in bits and pieces. Like sure it'll work, but when it's like or if it's like serving a greater purpose as far as like symbolism or like this larger message, which I still could not really get from this movie. Like I don't, what was the message? Not saying like every movie needs like a moral, like a fable or something like that, but like obviously there's like a big theme of like mothers and his
Yeah,
relationship with his mother, but
definitely.
like I didn't really know what to walk away from this movie with.
Yeah, that's fair. I think, and the reason I asked that was because I think that makes sense. Like, it makes sense why you feel that way, and kind of like hearing you kind of voice it that way makes more sense to me. I think for me that's why such a difference on my end is because I love that feeling of like I don't even think about what's real. Like I'm not even trying to like figure it out or like determine for myself like, oh, this is real. Sometimes I do. It just depends more so on the movie, I think. Um and like what it all means, because I think sometimes there is a true correct quote unquote interpretation of it, and I think that's comes down to the artist and how it was written, how it's directed and everything. But
I think that here in particular, it's like don't even think to try and like discern anything, because the world in itself is already like, even if there is a baseline reality for this world to build on into those more surreal, absurd moments, like the world itself is not real. Like this is not our world. You know what I mean? Like the world he lives in as Beau is crazy, like to some extent, I think, no matter what. Which is part of why, like, dude, the first, I mean, Zach can attest to this. The first hour of the movie, I would think I was literally in tears, like laughing.
Cackling.
Even like when the theater was like almost dead silent, like at certain points. There's in fact, the opening dialogue of the movie is talking about him like potentially swallowing mouthwash. And I like was laughing, I think, for like a minute or two after that like single line. And I thought it was like one of the funniest lines like in the entire movie. But for me, I think to the point of the message, if that's something that we want to try and like cap onto this, is I guess the way I kind of, after thinking about it so much and hearing other people's interpretations and just reflecting on everything, I think this movie, and part of why I love the movie so much, why I rate it highly or just think so highly of it in general, regardless of a rating or a number you want to put on it, is he earned this movie from Hereditary and Midsommar by being very well regarded movies by audiences and by critics, and by making a good amount of money, especially compared to some other A24 movies. And I think that this was him saying, you know, I did that. And now there was probably not going to be a better opportunity in my entire career to make this movie with no repercussions or like no restraints. And like, I don't even care what people think about it. I don't care what people interpreted it as. I don't care that people think that I'm the elevated horror guy from my first two movies. Like, I'm going to just make a nightmare, absurdist 3-hour epic and just see what people think. And like, you know, hopefully they'll embrace like certain parts of it and enjoy certain parts of it. Maybe other parts they won't connect with or understand, but like I just got to do it and see like what happens. And I think he mentioned Ari Aster that Joaquin Phoenix was his favorite collaborator, and it's been the greatest experience of his career working with him on this movie, because he was able to challenge Ari Aster and question him and like provoke him to elevate certain parts of the movie, or critique and kind of adjust certain parts of the movie to make it like stronger. And I think that gives me some hope, and I think makes me even more curious to see what his next work looks like, having gone through this experience. I think making a movie like this, regardless of what other people think about it, can make him a stronger filmmaker, and can almost like it's almost like getting it out of his system in some way. And like that kind of sounds like a bad thing, but it's almost like a creative like purge, or like just a big like canvas that he's just filling up with ideas and inspiration and feelings and thoughts. And I think that is something that as a movie, like as a singular piece, like I think we don't see that often, you know, in any budget level, in any studio system. I think that it's very hard to see something like that, and I think that's pretty much what we get here. But to the point of a message or like some general theme, I would say this movie, like the way it handles and takes a look and comments on like mental health and personalities and views and perspective and all these different things, I think it obviously hits you over the head and like hammers home like every single thing it's trying to say. Like, it's not a subtle movie by any means, but I think it just kind of, in a very extreme way, tries to paint an image of how your parents, and particularly your mother, obviously, like molds you as a person and like shapes you as a person and your worldview and the way that you interpret the world. Whether it's good things or like relationships and love and sex and these other kind of elements, or like bad things, like you know, I guess you could say all those things I just said have bad elements to them potentially, but just the ins and outs and like all of the things in the world that you should be able to experience like for yourself, and create your own feelings about and thoughts and opinions on, and the way that your upbringing and your actual parent can really damage you in a lot of ways, I would say, and inhibit you and create all these different issues that Beau experiences on a mental health level, but then also, I guess, and how your mental health can influence the world around you, and how that can affect your relationships and your job and your personal life and all these other things. I think that there's just it's a heavy movie. Like, it's not clean, it's not light reading, I guess you could say. But I think just in general, I think if you can stomach a movie, like any movie that is just bold and like it does not give a damn what you think about it, and like what your interpretation is, or kind of what you're ultimately going to feel at the end. Like, if you're willing to go in and accept that, I think you will get something out of it. You may not necessarily like love it beginning to end. You may not enjoy it or say that you would recommend it, but like Zach, he didn't really care for the movie ultimately, but I think you did enjoy and got something out of like certain parts of it. I think
Absolutely. Yeah. I would echo what you said completely. If you have like any degree of tolerance for the type of movie that we've described, it's definitely worth seeing, because
there's nothing like it, man.
Yeah, there will be something in here that works for you. I mean, yeah, I've said that I liked the first hour quite a bit, and it's hysterical. There's so much just like, what the hell is going on, like in a very good way.
Yeah.
That I think it's definitely worth checking out, whether you end up, 5-starsing it, or you're more like me, or you hate it. Like, there's something there will be something there for you. So don't be deterred by the runtime, by any reviews or reactions. Like, see it for yourself. Like Johnny said, it's a very unique experience that you're not going to get with most movies at the theater. And if you can still see it in IMAX, check it out there, because that was quite the experience on the big screen. But any final thoughts on Beau Is Afraid? What's your Ari Aster ranking before we wrap this up?
I think it's as strongly as I feel about all three of them. I think it's still order of release for me. I would say Hereditary is still such peak, like, visceral horror and terror, like in my experience watching it, and still the way I feel about it today. Just an amazing like feature debut. Midsommar, pretty much almost equal, I would say, in most categories. Performances, I think his direction is even stronger in that movie, but I love all the elements around that, the colors and the themes and whatnot. Like found family and versus like a cult and all these different things. And the cast, I think, is really great too. And then this one is, again, it's not like a 5 out of 5. I wouldn't put it on the tier of those two, but I still think it's an amazing accomplishment and just a very like singular like piece of work that I'm excited to just revisit. And as weird as that might sound, like, just I think these movies are so sick and twisted, but they are like almost, I don't even want to say like comfort movies necessarily, but I enjoy like thinking about them and like piecing them apart and together. And I think Beau Is Afraid would just be slightly down for me, of course, but I have to see it again. I've seen the other ones 4, 5, 6 times each, probably. So what about you?
I'm going, if it was based on pure terror, Hereditary would be number 1, but preference, Midsommar, Hereditary, then this.
Okay. Yeah.
I think just as far as like what I like the most, Midsommar is across the board fantastic. I remember saying it when we talked about it back in the day, but more uncomfortable and disturbed with Midsommar than like flat out afraid.
Yeah, definitely.
Terrified during Hereditary, and then this obviously being its complete own
hilarious. Like, the other movies have great humor. I think that's one of like Ari Aster's greatest strengths is his humor and like his ability to balance tones in that way. Obviously Hereditary and Midsommar are more like horror, like psychological, like horror based, but there's some still funny stuff in there. This is like him leaning so much more into the like comedy, I would say, like dark comedy, obviously, but still comedy. But yeah, I again would recommend it. Still a huge Ari Aster fan. Really liked this movie, and looking forward to seeing it again. I'm definitely going to get the 4K to go with my other two that I already have from him. And I'm just really excited. Like, again, he's so young, a lot of talent, a lot of ideas. So super curious to see what else he has coming in the future. And shout out to A24 as well for giving us a great screening in IMAX. Got to see it in that format and got some swag as well, which was very nice, and always a good time there. So yeah.
Absolutely. There you have it. We talked about a lot. Barry, Mandalorian, Ted Lasso, Succession, Beau Is Afraid. What you should take away from this episode is whether you like TV, movies, horror, comedy, sports, Star Wars, I don't know. There's something for you to watch out there. We're living in a great time of entertainment. So go check something out. And thank you so much for tuning in. We appreciate you listening to us go on and on about our favorite TV shows, movies, everything that's going on. We would not be able to do it without your support.
Absolutely. Thank you so much again. Always a great time sitting down with Zach, talking over everything, giving our thoughts and feelings, and couldn't do it without you. So thank you all for your support. Keep up with us, of course, going forward. Stay tuned. Follow on Twitter, Instagram, like us on Facebook, and subscribe on YouTube. Those can all be found at Inside Film Room.
And while you're at it, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. We're on Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, Google, Amazon, iHeartRadio, YouTube, anywhere you can get a podcast. We are there. And make sure to subscribe to our newsletter as well, so you can get all of the latest interviews, articles, reviews, giveaways, all of those sent straight to your inbox. And be sure to come back next time, where we'll be talking about who knows what, but we'll be here, and we hope you are too. We'll see you then.